And just like that, it's Friday, the 21st of February, almost through February into March. Hi, everybody. I'm Russ Kane. This is a very packed midday show. Welcome. Thank you for joining. I've thought really very carefully about what I was going to say. Yesterday was a horrendous day, a turning point, I think. When you get to a stage when you think the situation in the Middle East cannot possibly get any worse, any darker, any more repulsive, any more savage, any more brutal, any more inhuman. What the world witnessed was incomparable. It was incomprehensible. And I just want to be clear. I felt it behooved me, frankly. Normally on Friday we keep it light. We will be light soon, I know. But I just felt I had to say something. I'm not a world commentator, and my words will do nothing. And that's part of the problem, because like so many people, and I'm not claiming, I just want to be clear, any special, oh, look at me nonsense. I'm not. But as my friends know, and as Jonathan, who's coming on soon, knows, Chantal Baz, I was in a fury. I was in such a state of anger, of absolute blind rage, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I'll come on to how my mood lifted in a bit, but I spent the whole day just boiling with rage because I felt utterly impotent, because I felt, what's the point? Because I felt there's nothing I can do about this, and also because I couldn't dissipate that rage. And you can write things on Facebook, you can write things on social media, but it doesn't bring the babies back, does it? I'm talking about the Beavers family, of course. What kind of subhuman monster do you have to be to do that? It would have been bad enough, let's be honest. And I know I'm just saying what you think. I'm just trying to articulate it. It would have been bad enough just killing babies. But to then parade them in such a way, to make a spectacle out of it, to have people sitting in like stands. So that was the line in the sand. That was the line in the sand. But what really sickens me to my stomach is all the useful idiots in the West, these pontificating film stars, these hand-wringing politicians who will find any excuse. There is no excuse. That line has now been crossed. People say, you've got to find a solution. If you've got a rabid dog that is uncontrollable and dangerous and will just bite and infect you, there's only one thing you can do. That's the only solution. The Red Cross, you are disgusting. You are disgusting. You are complicit by your inaction. You are complicit by your silence. And you are complicit by taking part in that utterly repulsive charade of the bodies. And on the coffins of the babies, it said the date that they were, you ready? Arrested. You don't arrest a baby. United Nations, hang your head in shame. You should be defunded. The BBC, I have no words except the BBC should be absolutely dismantled, root and branch. And before you said, what about the programs? What about David Attenborough? What about this? Yeah, absolutely right. Keep that. Keep it as a subscription. Get rid of the BBC News. BBC News, a repulsive propagandist arm for appalling savagery. The latest documentary, if you haven't followed the latest documentary, and then you get these half-hearted excuses, oh, we didn't know that it was narrated by the son of one of the top Hamas people. We didn't know. If you didn't know, BBC, you're either as stupid as people think you are, or you are as corrupt as people think you are, or you're part of it. That's the only way that you could not know. It's shocking. What we saw yesterday was the final straw. Because every single person sitting there, cheering, clapping, bringing their children to watch this repulsive, macabre, disgusting display, as if it was a football match or a pantomime, you are complicit. They're all part of it. Starving in Gaza, do they look starved to you? No, of course not. And amazing that all the uniforms where everybody's a doctor, everybody's a journalist, everybody's something marvelous. It's amazing. At the moment there's a ceasefire, all the pristine uniforms come out. All the guns come out. All the brand new pickup trucks come out. Brand new, out of the box. And the world has watched every single one of the people marching, and I'm going to call them what they are, hate marches, on a Saturday in London for a year, which has been allowed by the police, been allowed by the Met. Every single one of those hate marches, you are complicit in this. What can we do? Nothing. You, me, Jonathan, who's coming on soon, all of you with your beautiful comments, watching from all over the world. What can we do? Nothing. We're powerless. We're absolutely powerless. And that's what hurts. And so, on a personal level, for us, as the gang on the Midday show, we have to work out how to park, how to cope with levels of anger that we haven't felt for a very long time. I don't know the answer to that. Jonathan helped me yesterday, and I'll explain when he comes on. Just a few. I could talk about it for hours. I've got nothing more to say except they are the most barbaric, psychopathic, hate-filled lunatics with no agenda except to kill and hurt. And the West and all these repulsive Hollywood idiots and the British idiots who applaud them and find empathy with them, you're as disgusting as they are. I want a refund of my license fee. BBC are part of the problem as much as the media. Absolute BBC and Sky News, I have to say, by the way. Good afternoon, Ross. I'm broken-hearted at this heartless killing. Absolutely. Robert Van Buren. I hate the BBC News. Yes, so do I. I think that's vile. Ruthie Aroni. And then cheering it up a little bit, she's still on bloody holiday. Kimmy Lashmar, hello from Lanzarote. Good afternoon. And here's a name we haven't seen in ages. Andrea Lucas. Hello, Andrea. Ruthie again. And Robert Van Buren. Well, that's it. I don't know what else to say. I really could talk about it for absolutely ages. But they're just words. But I just couldn't let it pass without trying to express my revulsion my despair. And when the retributions come, and they will, and all the crybaby liberals going, oh, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. You started this shit. Other people are going to finish it. And you're all complicit. That's what I got to say on this subject. Okay. And Brian Kingsford says, unfortunately, Russ, we're just living in the superpowers, disgusting games of power play, and the little people cannot do a thing to stop it. No, not really. No, I don't. Honestly, I don't want to turn this into a huge political show because it's Friday. Brian, I could discuss this with you for ages, but that's not entirely true. It's not entirely true. And if you don't think these fanatics, some of the people who've come here on the little boats, you're fine. You're escaping horrendous things. But if you don't think some of these fanatics are here, you're as naive as the stupid actors and actresses in Hollywood who are just morons. Your rabid dog analogy is good. Okay, all right. Let's try and move on. This man really helped me yesterday, and he will explain why. He is our fearless theatre critic, Jonathan Baz.
Russ, hey, good afternoon, Russ. I just actually want to pick up one comment on your opening theme, and it's a statement made earlier this morning on Twitter by Ed Hussein, who's a very brave Muslim chap who I have a lot of respect for. He said this earlier today. He said, after a week spent in England, I worry for where it's heading. Not a single UK imam or representative, his words, of the so-called Muslim Council of Britain denounced Hamas yesterday or after October the 7th. He said their silence is deafening. And I just really wanted to share his
They
words.
have never, ever. Why do they get a free pass, Jonathan?
I don't know. Anyway, moving on to yesterday.
Yes,
and indeed.
Please
What a joyous day it turned out to be.
Correct.
After grimness through the day. Russ, it was a joy with you to revisit Here You Come Again.
Yeah.
The Dolly Parton jukebox musical that I reviewed press night back at the Riverside Studios just before Christmas. And last night, you and I went along, you to see it for the first time, to also have a quick hello with Trisha Paoluccio, who graced our show 4 weeks ago, who plays Dolly. And for me, to see the show again was sheer pleasure. Only way to describe it, but also to see a show. We saw it in Wimbledon, effectively on the road. It's the nearest the tour is coming back to London. It's been all around the British Isles and shortly to finish the tour, I think tomorrow. And to see a show not in the slightly rarefied atmosphere of a press night, where can be a lot of enthusiasts for a show. There can also be, and I'm trying very hard to keep my language polite here. I don't know what the collective noun is for a group of theatre critics, which of course I'm one.
A bunch of snotty assholes who are pseudo-intellectuals is probably the phrase.
No, there's got to be a one-word condensation of that, Russ, which I'm sure I probably can't say on a lunchtime family show. Nonetheless, it was glorious to be at a show away from that collective noun, to be in amongst a theatre in Wimbledon. It was packed to the gunnels of people who were just grinning, having a terrific time. Usually you get tutted on if you sing along with the songs in a musical, and to be fair, generally quite rightly so. When I go and see Oliver, I don't want to hear anyone else singing as long as he needs me. I want to hear the woman on the stage who's probably belting it fantastically. Indeed. Right. But last night, with every single Dolly Parton hit after hit after hit that the show goes through, all around me, the audience was singing along with absolute joyousness. And I have to say, I loved every second of it. It was a great night out, only enhanced, Russ, by you having me as my having you as my +1 for the occasion. An absolute
I've got to say
delight.
this, and this is the power of art. In all seriousness, then we're going to bring on Jonathan's very special guest. This is the power of art. Okay, I was in this absolute blind fury all day. I didn't want to go. I really wanted to phone Jonathan and say, Jonathan, I'm in such a horrific mood. I don't want to go drag myself to Wimbledon and see a show about Dolly Parton, which I know is a flimsy story. I didn't want to go. And the show transformed my mood. It was joyous. It was hilariously funny. It was adorable to watch. The audience atmosphere was fantastic. And in the light of such darkness, to be surrounded by just pure joy, fun, laughter, and people enjoying themselves, just unbridled enjoying themselves, was a wonderful experience. And it really transformed the way, and I think that is the wonder of art at its most basic.
Agreed.
At its most basic. And
agreed.
Bless everybody. And if you can grab a ticket, and I rarely say this, I really do. I know Wimbledon's a bit of a drag to get to, but you can get there on Southwest trains, which I did. It finishes tomorrow. If you can get a ticket, I promise, and I rarely say this, you will absolutely love it. The guy, it's 2 people in the cast plus a band, 2 people. That's kind of it. And the guy, and I'm sorry, I don't know his name.
Stephen Webb
was unbelievable. I couldn't take my eyes off him. The energy that this guy had, the energy, the interaction, they kind of break the fourth wall and they kind of don't. And the audience, he had the audience in the palm of his hand on a really thin, flimsy story, and everybody ate it up. He was phenomenally good, as was Trish playing Dolly Parton, which, I mean, she sounds like her, she looks like her, but that's kind of an impression. His energy, if you could bottle it, you could power London with it. There you go. I'm done.
Yep. Dr. Theatre. You know,
Absolutely.
Sometimes it works really well. I was quite glad to re-encounter him, having had a number of shows recently that have been a disappointment from the good doctor. Last night was a delight. However, moving on, talking of future delights to be gracing the West End, opening next week is a show called The Last Laugh, and it's about loosely about 3 of our greatest comedians of the late 20th century.
Late 20th century, yeah.
And joining us now for the remainder of my theatre slot is the writer of this rather brilliant piece of theatre, Paul Hendy. So, Russ, if you can press the necessary buttons.
There he is.
Hello there.
Paul, let's get you in big focus, because that's the important thing. That's the important thing. Paul, before Jonathan does his Jonathan stuff, I just want to say I saw this on TV and I adored it. I absolutely, and I'm not just saying that. I know we've not met, but when people know I have no filter. I loved it. I loved every moment of it. I thought it was beautifully crafted, and bravo to you. Bravo.
Oh, thank you.
I absolutely loved it. I've never forgotten it, and I remember how much I hugely enjoyed it and admired it. That's enough for me. Jonathan, back to you.
Thank you.
Paul, thank you for finding time in amongst the busy schedule as West End opening night draws close. I've not yet seen the play, though I have to say nearly all of my friends who were at the Edinburgh Fringe last year did see it. All of a similar demographic to me, which is born sometime in the 1960s. All raved. And this is a show, I'll give it a very brief description, with 3 actors who respectively play Bob Monkhouse, Tommy Cooper, Eric Morecambe. 3 characters who, if you are of that age dynamic, these guys are burned into our soul as the very essence of brilliant comedy. I haven't seen the show. I've only had the privilege of being at the press launch that you and the producers arranged a couple of weeks ago, where the 3 actors gave a tiny taste of what the show is all about. But please, Paul, tell us, where did the show come from? Really, over to you.
Well, Jonathan, I think you both hit the nail on the head there. We grew up with these. If you're of a certain age, I think you grew up watching these brilliant comedians. For me personally, I remember when I was about 6 years old, just sitting on the carpet in front of the television, and I now know it was the Morecambe Wise Christmas special.
Oh.
And I remember laughing. I don't know why I was laughing, but I was laughing. And I remember looking around at my mom and my dad and my nan and my granddad and my brother and my sister, and they were all laughing as well. And I don't know, something in that has given me a lifelong obsession with comedy. And why is something funny? Why is somebody funny and somebody else isn't? And I think that's what I tried to do in the play. I mean, it's about more than comedy, but at the heart of it is, why are we still talking about these comedians? I mean, if you think Tommy and Eric died 40 years ago last year, and we're still talking about them now. I've written a play about them. They still top the ratings, Eric and Ernie, if they're on at Christmas. Why? And I wanted to examine that, really. And I think more than anything, I wanted to spend an hour and a half in the company, or as close as we could get to the company of three brilliant comedians. So for me, it's a love letter to that golden age of what I think is British comedy.
Oh, indeed, the golden age of British comedy, and particularly also, British television comedy, which was so exquisitely written and exquisitely performed. The craft that went in to comedy in that golden age. And you're right, you've picked on three legends, but they're three amongst, if one looks back at that time, a number of comedy legends who existed. And what you've done is, say, you've created a fascinating, I hope, because I haven't seen it, I've only seen the press launch.
No, Jonathan, I promise you it is fascinating. And the other thing it does, Paul, if I may say, which is down to you and your craft, is that you think, I wonder if this is the interactions they would have had they been in that room together. What would it have been like? And in a strange way, Paul, you feel, well, this is just me, because they are my comedy idols. Absolutely my British comedy idols. My American ones are quite different and much harder. But it's like you feel privileged. I know this sounds very odd, but you kind of feel privileged to be a fly on the wall thinking, well, I'd never actually be in this situation. But can you imagine if you were and you could just watch this? It would have been amazing.
Well, I hope it's an insight, and we'll never know. But I imagine this is what they might have spoken about. And a really funny thing happened. We did a week at Brighton Theatre Royal last week, sort of pre-West End run, and it was really funny. I was sitting in the actors' dressing room, and they were all getting ready. And the actors, by the way, are just brilliant. They are these characters. They're not just actors. Damien Williams is Tommy Cooper. Simon Cartwright is Bob Monkhouse. I mean, when you see Bob Monkhouse, you what? He really is it. Bob Golding is Eric Morecambe. And we were sitting in the dressing room, and there was just a lot of banter going on. And I said, boys, listen to us. This is literally the sort of dialogue that's in the play. And we were having a very similar conversation. It was quite bizarre, actually. We all sort of went, oh, yeah. So we'll never know what they talked about. But what I hope is I captured something of the spirit of those brilliant comedians and something of the essence of what made them great, hopefully. And they all had very different approaches to comedy. So Tommy Cooper was it was innate. He was a comedy genius, I would say. He couldn't help but be funny. He had literally funny bones. He was
you just saw him. You just saw him.
Yeah.
And you were laughing.
Exactly. And you know what? This is touched on in the play. Sometimes it was a bit of a curse for him, I think. Sometimes he just wanted to have a bit of a serious conversation, and you couldn't help but laugh. And I think sometimes he found that difficult. And I think
the same as Paul, the same as when Eric Morecambe was having a genuine heart attack and was in the car and wound the window down to try and get to the hospital because he thought he was dying. And the guy thought it was a rude, the person on the pavement, random person, thought it was a joke.
There's a famous story about that. He did. Eric was driving a Jensen Interceptor, and he got, what was his name? Walter Somebody will know the guy's name. It's quite. It sounds like a comedy made-up name. The guy that gave Eric Morecambe a lift to the hospital. So he got this guy, and the guy famously said, "I've only ever driven a tank before," and he drove him to the hospital. That's not the end of it. Drove Eric's Jensen Interceptor to the hospital with Eric having a heart attack, very serious. They put him on the gurney, and then apparently, what was his name, Walter, went up to Eric, gave him a piece of paper and before you go.
No.
The famous story. Eric tells that story. I wish I should know his name. I'm embarrassed that I don't know his name.
Oh,
anyway.
I mean, Paul, I'm going to jump in. As I say, having only had a taste of this show over some very tasty bacon rolls, I would hasten to add at the launch. What struck me was the brilliance in which these three iconic characters have been brought to life by the actors. I'm reminded of when one goes and see a show, the comparison, and it sounds like a stupid comparison, is The Lion King or Warhorse, where there's puppetry on stage to depict the characters, the creatures, the animals, and within a minute or two, those puppeteers have disappeared from your vision, and you're seeing what they're seeking to represent. So it is with these three brilliant actors who you named a couple of minutes ago, because within 2 minutes of them starting to do their routine, I was transfixed. And I was convinced that I was in the presence. My disbelief was thoroughly suspended.
Yeah.
And I was in the presence. I was in the same room as these three guys. They are fantastic. You forget that they are very talented actors.
Well, that's
because they're embodiment. And just tell me, where did you find them?
Well, I actually wrote it. So I originally, like I say, I've had a lifelong obsession with comedy and with these three comedians, but others as well. That period, that era of comedy, I've just grown up loving it. And actually, I first wrote this as a film, so it's a short film, which I think Russ has seen, which you can see on Vimeo. I think it's on YouTube as well, called The Last Laugh, and it's with the same three actors. And this was in 2016. This is how long it's taken.
Oh, wow.
So I shot it as a short film, and it did well on the film festival circuit. It won awards in Los Angeles. I mean, they got it in Los Angeles, which was great, and sort of all over the world. It did the film festival circuit, brilliant. And then it was just there as a film. But I'd always thought, oh, there's more in this. And one of the reasons, undoubtedly, for its success is what you've just said, Jonathan, is just how brilliant the actors are, because they're not acting. And the truth is, I didn't write it and then try and cast three actors. I wrote it because I knew I had those actors. So two of the guys have been good friends of mine for years. Bob, who plays Eric, and Damien, who plays Tommy. I've known them for years. I run a production company. They've worked for me for years. I know how brilliant they are. And then Bob Golding, who plays Eric, said, he said, I found this guy who plays Bob Monkhouse. He said, you will not believe him. And I think we've said in the past, a lot of people can do Tommy. A lot of people can just go, and a lot of people can do Eric. Well, hey, right. Hopefully we go deeper than that. We do go deeper than that with Tommy and Eric. But when you see Bob Monkhouse, he is Bob Monkhouse. It's literally
that is so hard to do. You've hit the nail on the head. Well, you would have as you created it. But just anybody can think they can do Tommy Cooper. So this has obvious mannerisms. So did Eric. But to nail as he does Bob Monkhouse so brilliantly, you think, how is he doing that? Because there's no
Russ,
particular
losing you a bit there.
He's still here.
Bit of a
I don't know.
Bit
why.
of a sound
glitch.
Paul,
internet
let me ask you. Sort of probably looking at the time. Probably one final question. Was there any in your writing of it and creating of your script? Has there been any collaboration with the three performers in making it what it is?
I think it certainly evolved, and I certainly listened to the actors, because undoubtedly they're as passionate as me. Once again, they're not three hired actors. Each of them is an expert on the character they play. So Damien Williams, who plays Tommy Cooper, he lives in Southend. In his garden, he's got a bar called Cooper's Bar, and you walk in there, and it's just filled with Tommy Cooper memorabilia. So he's not acting as Tommy. He is Tommy, and it's a lifelong obsession for him being Tommy. So he is Tommy Cooper. Same with Bob, who plays Eric Morecambe. He played Eric in a one-man play a few years ago, I think 10 years ago, which played Edinburgh and did a UK tour. Once again, he's grown up as Eric Morecambe. Gary Morecambe, who's Eric's son, said, Bob Golding is my dad. He's my
wow.
He said, I can't see where Bob Golding stops and where my dad starts. He says he just is my dad. And then, as we've discussed with Simon Cartwright as Bob Monkhouse, he can't not be Bob Monkhouse. He is Bob Monkhouse. So the three of them, if they say, if I write, I've written a line, and if Damien says, I think Tommy might say it more like that, of course I listen, because we're all passionate about it. This isn't a, it's not a business thing. There's no bottom line. It's like this is coming from a place of love for everybody.
Wow. Indeed,
and hopefully that comes out.
And that shows, as I say, from the tiny taste I've seen, it shows so clearly. It's on at the Noel Coward Theatre until March the 22nd. So if you're in London, that's the most convenient place to see it. It's then around the country, probably where tickets may be slightly more affordable. It's going to York, Richmond, Newcastle, Sheffield, Milton Keynes, Glasgow, Birmingham, Manchester, and Guildford. So it's a heck of a time on the road coming.
Going to New York as well. Can you believe we're going for the Brits Off Broadway season, which is
terrific. When's that? When does that happen?
So that is in April. We go 5 weeks, April the 22nd, something, until May. What the Americans will make of it, let's see. But very excited, because obviously here, as we're discussing, there's that innate knowledge. We've all grown up with these characters, whereas in New York, we'll be starting from.
It's interesting.
They were on the Ed Sullivan Show, but they've never really, none of them cracked America. So it'll be so interesting to see how it plays.
And Americans, they have quite a quirky interest in good British humor.
Yes,
exactly. Monty Python, when I did Camp America many decades ago, the talk was of Monty Python. And they
used to love Benny Hill.
Benny Hill.
But
he was Benny Hill was the one comic who really did, other than Charlie Chaplin and Stan Laurel. I'm talking like in the 70s, 80s. Benny Hill was the one who really.
And do you know what fascinated me, Paul, was when I lived in America, we think of Benny Hill as, girls not wearing very much and him tapping Jackie right on the head and, running around with a speeded up film. And they went, gee, Russ, Benny Hill, he's so satirical. And I'm like looking at them thinking, well, I'm not seeing satire. I'm seeing into the beer kind of, saucy postcards. They saw it as great satire, which I found fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I think to be fair, Russ, there was a great satire on the dairy industry.
Stop it. Oh, yes, on that. Oh, yeah, that was sweet. Paul, we wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It truly is, and I rarely say this, Jonathan, it is a work of art you've created, an absolute work of art. I wish we could talk about, I wish we had time to talk about comedy, because there's so many things literally that we can talk about. But I know you've got to go. But thank you and bless you. Wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you for your enthusiasm, and come and see it. Yes, do come and see it. Thank you.
We're going to do that. We're going to definitely come. Bless you. Paul Hendy, what a great guy. What a charming fellow. Charming. And go and see this show. Go and see it. Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you. See you in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Looking forward. And thank you for last night. You were you really
it was a pleasure. It was literally a pleasure.
Bless you. Jonathan Baz, our fearless theatre critic. Seriously, just before Chantal comes on, just before she does, it's this thing, the Dolly Parton show, here we go again. Here I come again. When you'll see, it's at the New Victoria, no, so somewhere else. the theatre in Wimbledon, the big theatre in Wimbledon. There's only one big theatre in Wimbledon. Finishes tomorrow night. I rarely say this. Go see it. It's just fun. If you want to feel good, just have fun. Speaking of feel good, is that the smoothest segue ever? She's finished brushing her hair now, so we can bring her on. Straight from hair and makeup, the huge Winnebago parked outside West London. Ladies and gentlemen, Chantal Rickards OBE.
No Winnebago, and don't tell any jokes this week, because otherwise it's all going to go pear-shaped very quickly.
I know. I'm not doing any gags. No, not from me.
How are you, Russ?
That is a very, very loaded question. I'll say okay and be professional. That's all I'm going to say.
No. I heard the top of the show, so yesterday was clearly a horrible day.
I just I couldn't deal with it.
Yeah,
and I feel very guilty. Chantal, I've known you for years, so I can say this. I felt very guilty because I didn't want anyone to think, oh, look, he's pulling focus. It's not about me. I didn't mean it to be like that at all. Millions of people, anyone with a heart, anyone with any humanity would have been utterly sickened. The whole situation is sickening. Yeah. But that was the line in the sand. I can't think of anything lower. No, I just can't.
Wherever children are concerned, it's just, you and I both used to work for Variety, where you were the chairman of the lovely children's charity Variety. And anything where children is concerned, it just literally hits me in the solar plexus. It is just shocking. The things that are perpetrated against small people. So anyway, I'm with you, buddy. It's a bad day for you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yes, anyway. But you know what? We talk about art, and sometimes you think, oh, that sounds so arty-farty. I didn't want to go and see this Dolly Parton show. It's the last bloody thing I wanted to do. I gave Jonathan every excuse to say, oh, don't bother to come. But no, I'll see you at Nando's at 6:30. And, Jesus. Anyway, I dragged myself off.
I have to say, they're certainly turning them round in that theatre, because I went to see Ghosts there only 2 weeks ago. So they're packing them in, turning them round.
It's a lovely theatre. I did two pantos. There was 2 pantos there. If you don't know the Richmond Theatre, it's a very old, it looks like a big old West End theatre.
Wimbledon.
And it was great. Oh, Wimbledon, sorry. Yeah. Wimbledon, yeah. And it was very charming. I had a lovely time there. Me and I think Russ Abbott, various people.
How brilliant was that?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, this was a fun show. Anyway, what has come across? Before you say anything, I'll tell you what. The only thing I've seen, I binge watched Unforgotten.
Good, so did I.
By Chris Lang.
Who ITV.
He's very sweet, and he messages me back if I message him, which is I've never met him, but it was very nice. So that
Series 6, that was good. That was
interesting. A lot of people angry about it, but that's what he wanted.
Okay.
So job done. That's really what he said. He wrote to me. He said it was about division, Russ, and I've divided people. So he's happy with that.
Yeah.
And then I watched a show. Not for you. You would not like it. It's on Netflix. I'm not sure if I've seen it before. My head. It's called The Alienist.
Oh,
2 series of that, and it's 10 episodes per series. It is one entire story strand.
Yes,
The Alienist. It's on Netflix. Set in New York in the 1890s.
Indeed,
there is a killer on the loose, and an alienist was the early word for a psychiatrist.
Is that right?
Yeah, they thought if you were alienated, they saw mental illness as if you were alienated from nature. So the people who came, it was very early on, no one believed in it. So the psychiatrists were called alienists in order to try and understand why someone was behaving in what seems to be completely random, insane way. That's why they're called alienists. It's very dark.
Yes.
Fabulous. It looks amazing. I'd forgotten how great it looks. The story is gripping.
Yeah.
Performances. Dakota Fanning is great. Luke Evans, who I know is one of your favorites.
Indeed.
Ludicrously handsome fellow. Annoyingly Welsh as well, which you love Wales, I know. Anyway, that's on Netflix. I'm going to shut up. What have you got?
No, well, that is bizarre, because that's the second time I've talked about The Alienist this week. Because 3 days ago, yesterday morning, I was sitting in BAFTA, sometime this week anyway, doesn't really matter, irrelevant to the story. And I bumped
We like details. We like because we want to peek into your life.
Okay. Right. Well, I was sitting at BAFTA and I spotted a woman who used to be on the board of directors of BAFTA in Los Angeles, which, as you know, I ran for a while.
Yes, you did.
And she was the person who gave me my final interview for the job in Hollywood.
Wow.
She was over in London. This is going back to 2015, early 2015. And a woman I liked a lot, but coincidentally, and I saw her at BAFTA, hadn't seen her for 5 years. And coincidentally, she was the executive producer of The Alienist.
No.
So there we are. So
Good Lord.
yeah, bit of a coincidence, but there we are.
Wow.
So, but I
Fantastic
did see,
show.
I saw 3 or 4 episodes right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then, as with everything, I never quite get to the end of things
Yeah.
because I'm always on to the next thing.
Of course.
But I really enjoyed it, and it was beautifully done. But you're
Oh.
right, very dark. One of those
Yeah.
sort of dramas that looks as though it's lit by a candle, which
Yeah.
slightly irritates
If
me.
you
but-
think of Hilary Mantel and what's the thing with the mirrors, whatever it's called, you know, bring up the bodies and all that, and people complaining about the Henry VIII series. Yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
looks like that.
yeah.
Because
Wolf
that's how it was lit, you know,
Yeah.
because that's how it was.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a very silly question? This is really embarrassing, but you know, and I don't know.
I might nod.
Is a lot of it CGI? Because they can't have, I know they can't, you know, the scenes I know they're dropped in, like the buildings are dropped in, I get that. But what about the crowd scenes and the horses and carts and the carriages and all the people in the street?
Do you know, these days it's actually rather difficult to tell. They have something now called previs, which is actually where you can create it all on a screen, and then you get the actors to play in front of it.
Wow.
And so it's sort of rather like the very, very old days where you'd have a backdrop, but
Yeah.
now, of course, it's a digital backdrop that is done at scale. And
It was jaw dropping.
yeah, and the actors.
I mean, if you don't, you are convinced there is no way you don't think they're in New York in sort of 1896. That you are
absolutely.
convinced of it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but often
You
to
almost
get
smell it.
scale,
You
they
can
have
almost smell it, and the dirt and the grime. It was terrific. Well, whoever did it, if you ever see her again, I'm a huge fan of whoever this lady is. Bravo to her. That's what I say. It's fabulous.
Oh,
Really great. Really
right.
great.
Well, I was going to lighten the load a bit this week because
Great.
I know you and I was definitely on my own for Valentine's night. I'm not sure whether you were, but I wouldn't like to ask. So I took myself off to see Bridget Jones, not actually on Valentine's night.
How can you? I know I'm going to say what everybody watching around the world. Here is this beautiful, charming,
Stop it.
intelligent, fantastic, interesting woman. Why is there not a queue of people? End of. Don't answer it. It's a rhetorical question.
No, I'm not going to answer.
Don't even go
Anyway,
there. I'm going to ask Michelle Vaughan because she knows everything clearly. And she's your mate. She's watching from Australia.
yeah, she lived
get
in my
that
home
radio
for quite a
for
long
these.
time, so she definitely knows where the bodies are buried.
Oh God.
That aside,
Whoa. Maybe that's
that
the
aside,
clue.
I went
I've
off.
got a very bumpy patio. Now you mention it, that patio outside where we have parties is quite uneven.
It is.
Yeah,
There are
it is.
several people there whose tales
No,
told.
don't.
Oh, straight out of Brookside.
Oh,
Anyway,
no.
I'm going to tell you
see
about
anyone. I can't ever see anyone when they do this. So I'm doing up the patio, and it's the first thing I come in my head. You've killed someone. There's someone under there.
Oh dear.
I know we're ridiculous. Okay, so
Well, first of all, where were you in the late 1980s? Were you a
I'm drunk
30-something
somewhere, I should
single woman at
imagine.
the time?
where was I in the late 1980s?
Yes. And were you a single 30-year-old woman at the time?
Oh, let me think about that. Was I a woman? No, I think I identified as a bloke.
Okay.
Still do.
In that case, you probably didn't read the Bridget Jones's diary.
I think you could bet the farm on that. Yes, I didn't. I was outrageous in the late 1980s, just having a blast.
Well, it was a newspaper column. Newspaper column written by a journalist called Helen Fielding. Some of us will remember because I used to read it avidly, and then she turned it into a book, which was Bridget Jones's diary, which was
Is that
then
how it
turned into
started?
a
I've
film.
forgotten that. Could you explain that? What she wrote it like it was a diary? Of
She
someone?
did. And she
Oh,
didn't put
clever.
a byline on it because she wanted it to seem as real as possible.
Oh,
So
wow.
they sort of half floated this idea that Bridget Jones might be a real person, but nobody really knew.
Oh, I see.
And then
know that.
anyway, eventually it was revealed that it was a journalist called Helen Fielding, who wrote originally, I think, for the Independent. Can't remember which way around it was. The Independent, then the Telegraph, then the Independent. I'm not entirely sure. But
Okay.
anyway, it became a film in 2001, which is a long time ago.
God almighty. That, I've seen the 2001.
Yes. And very loosely based on a sort of Pride and Prejudice thing going on with a Mark Darcy character who we now know as the gorgeous Colin Firth. Bit of a sort of joke about the fact that he was Mr. Darcy coming back to play Mark Darcy, the humanitarian lawyer.
Oh,
Bridget Jones, who's the basket case overeater, overdrinker, single woman in her 30s. I think it starts when she's supposed to be 32 and living a sort of big-ish life in London as a television researcher. And then the scoundrel of the piece, Hugh Grant, who plays scoundrels better than actually he plays anything else. He's a perfect scoundrel. So we've now got the latest version of the movie, which is called Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. But what is so interesting is this hasn't got as many laughs as the previous films. Certainly not as many as the first one, which was definitely the most hilarious of all of them. But its central theme is about loss, because without letting on too much of the story, and everybody pretty much who's seen the posters knows already, that Bridget Jones is on her own and her husband has died.
Oh, God.
A woman in her 50s with 2 kids. So
whoa. So they're not pretending she's still 31.
No.
Oh, I see. Okay. I know. I'll be honest, I know nothing about the film. Just the posters, and I'm not sure I've even studied those properly. So she's now in her 50s.
She's now in her 50s. She's got 2 kids.
Yeah.
And she's living in a very nice house in Hampstead Heath, and lots of scenes filmed on Hampstead Heath, which is, it was so much part of my life as a young woman in London, and reading about this woman that clearly was a crazy character that didn't exist. But a lot of the references, if you've grown up with Bridget Jones, you feel such
I've got to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Breaking news from Australia.
Oh.
I'll be over in the UK in August, Russ, so we can discuss Chantal's patio then. Oh, Michelle. You and I lunching in Soho.
I'm going to have to get
every last detail, Michelle. Bring notebooks and diaries.
Oh no! I'm going to phone my friends at the border guard and tell them to stop her coming in. Anyway, Bridget Jones, go and see the new film. Did you
enjoy it? You enjoyed it? I
loved it, but I cried more than I laughed.
Oh.
Which actually, I thought, is it just me? Am I just having a bad day? And I sort of wondered whether it was all as intentional to sort of squeeze the lemon dry. But I've since read up on what other critics have reported. And they've all said exactly the same thing, that it is sentimental beyond belief, especially if you've followed the Bridget Jones story, as a lot of us have, who sort of grew up with it. And it's beautifully played. It's actually got sort of a lot of pathos, a lot of sentiment for the right reason as opposed to the wrong reason. There's a lot of growing up that's happened and more growing up to be done.
Well, I hope so. She's 51, for God's sake. She's 51. She's 12. I mean, grow up.
But it is called Mad About the Boy for a reason. And
the
gorgeous young actor who I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Leo Woodall, plays a significant love interest.
Oh, God.
Significant love interest, but it doesn't stop there because... Once she's gone back onto the dating scene,
she's spreading it a bit thin, as we used to say.
Well, not quite, because
Marmite.
She's not actually behaving very badly. She's just looking to fall in love again.
Is she? Yeah.
I
think that's what I said in the late 80s. Yeah, I think that's what I was saying.
You are being particularly obtuse this week.
Well, good for her. That's what I
You've
say.
got to go with it. It's really
It's Rennie. I can never pronounce her name. Rennie Zellweger, right? I got the right.
Renée
Please say
Zellweger. Yes.
Okay. I like her. I always thought she was good.
Very good.
And Colin Firth's not in it. Is he dead?
Well, he is in it, but I can't sort of tell you how, really. He is in it. And
are they
Hugh
making
Grant's in it.
pottery together? That would be my clue.
They're not quite doing pottery together, but that's a fairly good suggestion.
Okay, yeah, it's almost like I'm a writer. Anyway, there we go. So that's it, Bridget.
Worth watching.
What was huge fun?
Yeah,
it was huge fun. You don't have to go to the cinema to see it, and it was enormous fun. And the other night, again, I think it was on Netflix or Prime. I can't remember. I can't remember what I had for breakfast. I haven't had breakfast. The new Nick Cage. I love Nicolas Cage because he's so out there and he doesn't care and he just eats the scenery, and I love it. Just because he's so over the top. And there's a film called Renfield. You won't like it. You won't like it, right? And it's Renfield. Anyone who knows the Dracula canon knows that Renfield was Dracula's familiar. Renfield was an English solicitor, married with a kid, goes out to Transylvania to try and do. This is the basis of the story. Do a big property deal and up his standing in. No, seriously, that's the original story of Dracula. Yes.
Wow.
In the original Bram Stoker's Dracula, Renfield is an English solicitor, it's a lawyer, goes out to Transylvania with the object of a big property deal to up his standing in London.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the whole point. And he gets trapped essentially by Dracula and becomes his slave, his servant forever. That's the Renfield story. This is set in now, and they managed to mix the mafia and Dracula's played by Nick Cage, is fantastic. Nicholas Hoult is terrific. It was so entertaining. It's simply called Renfield. It's very gory, but in a like over the top, ludicrous way. So it's not like The Sopranos gory. It's just like crazy gory.
Okay.
I thought it was hilarious.
All right,
absolutely hilarious.
I don't normally like things that frighten me, but I did see Nosferatu, which
came out no, I couldn't.
About 6 or 8 weeks ago.
Yeah.
6 weeks ago, something like that. And actually, it's incredibly well made. I did actually vote for it in one of the BAFTA voting categories because it looks extraordinary. But actually, I think it's done pretty well. I mean, people like horror movies still. That's not going away anytime soon. So I did sit through that.
I couldn't. I'd be terrified.
I'll take a look.
I couldn't sit through that. But Renfield's very, very silly. It's not a great piece of art. It's just hilariously over the top bonkers.
Okay.
But huge fun.
Huge fun. Okay.
There we go.
Now, are you into boxing?
Yes.
Well, in that case, you're going to have to sign up with Disney Plus.
Oh, God, this will be Stephen Knight's new show.
It's Stephen Knight's new show.
Who I used to work with, as you know.
Yes. And it's called 1,000 Blows.
It is.
And it's 1880, London, East End, Victorian London, grim, grimy, dark. It's brilliant. I've only seen one episode. They've made 6.
Oh.
They've made 12, but they've released 6. I don't know how long it's going to take them to release the next 6, but they are already there. Judging by episode 1, which has been very well received by anybody who's already watched it. It comes out today. So, but anybody who's seen
Stephen Graham?
Raving about Stephen Graham.
Stephen Graham is, by the way, I put that up because Clark's watching in, somewhere in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Clark, who is one of my cigar buddies from America, he comes over and we met on social media. And Clark is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's a lovely, lovely man. So hello to you, Clark. That's nice.
Good. They're probably still deep in winter in Michigan.
Oh, God. It's just, we moan if it's like raining a little bit. They're digging themselves up to here in snow. Stephen Graham.
So,
am I right in thinking he is one of the greatest freaking actors we have? He's unbelievable, this man.
Completely. And his range is absolutely fantastic.
Oh.
He's quite a small guy. I've met Stephen several times and I like him enormously. He's quite a small guy and he used to be relatively slender and he now is a buff Adonis. He worked out for 6 months to get the musculature that you need to be a convincing bare knuckle fighter, because the story features him as the leading Sugar, he's called, the leading bare knuckle fighter in London.
Oh, right. Okay.
Massively involved in the whole underworld, the crime scene. Counterbalanced is a woman who's a fabulous actress, who plays the girl Mary, and that's Erin Doherty, whose work I don't know terribly well, but my God, she's good. Yeah. And she runs a crime syndicate of women who are the thieves and pickpockets. And then the third person in it.
Was that why Michelle Vaughan was sent out to Australia?
Very possibly. Very possibly. Let's say no more about that.
No. It just had Botany Bay written all over it.
And then there's a third character played by Malachi Kirby, who is somebody called Hezekiah. Now, these three people actually existed. Hezekiah is a character who comes, a person who came from Jamaica to find fame and fortune in the United Kingdom, arriving in London in 1880, and falls in with the Mary character and eventually ends up on opposite sides of the boxing ring to the Stephen Graham character. But they were all real characters from that time, which is amazing. But this is a fabulous story that's been created by Stephen Knight, most well known for Peaky Blinders. So if you're a Peaky Blinders fan, this is right up your street. And it's as seamy and dark as you absolutely want it to be, but better lit.
So you can see what's going on. Stephen Knight, a little bit of background for everybody. You know this. Yeah. Stephen and I worked together at Capital Radio for many years. Stephen was in our press office with his writing buddy, Mike Whitehill. And they were just the most charming, normal, down-to-earth. I ran into Mike Whitehill a week ago, bizarrely, in a bar. What a surprise. Anyway, Stephen and Mike then went on to write the scripts. They didn't create it, but they went on to write the scripts with David Briggs, my old mate, who hired me at Capital, for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And the rest is history. Stephen Knight has written so much. He's probably now, Chantal, help me out here, probably the most in-demand scriptwriter in the world at the moment. I would say pretty close.
Very possibly, certainly in the United Kingdom.
In the United Kingdom, he's the number one scriptwriter. But in Hollywood, he's had a huge Hollywood
success.
Yeah, he's hugely. Yes, he is.
And he used to come to our BAFTA parties in Hollywood, and it was always absolutely lovely that that he would turn up, because people don't have to come along to these things. So I was always very grateful that he was there.
And he hadn't changed.
No, such a nice bloke.
He hadn't. This is the beautiful thing. Him and Mike Whitehill, and I have to say, and the same for Tarrant. You go from being moderately successful to sort of superstardom in your field, and people can become absolute arseholes and just revolting. And Mike and Stephen and Tarrant and a load of other people, they're the same people that you used to meet and muck around with and have fun with. And that's a testament to them as human beings. And I think that's a wonderful thing. By the way, Clark Gilbert, who's done his own share of boxing, which is why he's saying that, he's in 13 degrees. That's Fahrenheit, Chantal, not centigrade. He's in 13 degrees Fahrenheit.
I thought
in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And and he's saying, I just watched the trailer, can't wait.
Yeah. It's really good. I mean, he's a really malevolent character, as is the Mary character, who's the queen of the pickpockets. The 40 elephants, as they're called. These are all women from Elephant and Castle who go around picking pockets. That makes sense.
Okay, I got that.
But they're trying to sort of go upscale in that they're just planning their first heist. Their first proper heist. I mean, it's very well put together. You just see this opening scene of the women, the 40 Elephants women as a gang, moving through the crowds, and then something happens and you go, hang on, this is not quite what it seems. It's just, you get completely sucked into the program really quickly.
There's a wonderful interview with Stephen Knight at length in the Telegraph. It was this week. And it was really so telling. And they said, why are you drawn to like, he did, oh God, what was that brilliant Tom Hardy thing? Taboo. He wrote Taboo, which was
that was very dark.
Sensationally good.
Yeah.
And they said, why are you drawn to such darkness? And he says, I'm not drawn to criminals at all. I'm drawn to the rebel. So I'm drawn to the idea of the rebel.
That's interesting.
In people, the people who don't fit neatly into society. Yeah. I'm not drawn to, crime. I'm just drawn to people who don't conform. And I thought that was a fascinating answer.
Very good insight.
He's such a brain box.
Clever man.
God, what a brain box.
Yeah. Anyway,
as Chantal would say, if you write one movie and it's a hit, or if you write one TV show and it's a hit, it's exceptional to do that, to get something away. To have hit after hit after hit is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
No, good for him. My kids know his work, which is sort of, because mostly these days kids don't really know what they're watching, and they
watch TV
and that, but they absolutely know Stephen Knight's work. They know Taboo, they know Peaky Blinders, and I know that they'll already be, lining this up to watch this evening when they get back from work. So yeah, very good.
Excellent. Any quick picks for
very quick pick? And
don't have to rush. I'm not going anywhere. But
no, but I'll rush briefly over the lead star who has gone to television for the first time, because I know he's not one of your faves, but that's Robert De Niro.
Well, no, I love him as an actor. As a human being, I think it's disgusting, but I love him as an actor. I think he's fantastic.
Well, he's worth every single penny that Netflix have thrown at their new series, which is called 0 Day. Yeah. He's a former president. Yep. There is a cyber attack on America. Because he was somebody who was an incredibly popular president, he is brought back by the current president to run the task force to try and find out how the cyber attack happened and who is attacking America. Uh-huh. And there are lots of layers to it. Ooh. The money is absolutely on screen. It's 6 episodes, 6 1 hours. I have no idea what happens to the end because I've avoided reading anything that has told me the whole story. But the first episode has literally thrown the kitchen sink on screen.
Wow.
And he's great. And he doesn't look like somebody who's slightly embarrassed to be doing telly.
Oh, that makes the change.
There's no such thing anymore. Because Harrison Ford's doing telly, Robert De Niro's doing telly, so telly's fine.
I'm available.
You what?
I'm available. Just saying. Just saying. So every Saturday morning, listen to this. This pissed me off. So every Saturday morning, I meet up with Ray Gelato and Colin Vaines. We have cigars, and a coffee. That's what we do every Saturday morning. Have done for years, right? In Soho. So Colin is a very successful film producer. Mm-hmm. And I've never met anybody interested with Colin, ever. So I get a WhatsApp. Guess who I'm with? So I go, meeting up with Ray or something. No, Bob De Niro. And I went, what? So he goes to the launch. Colin somehow blagged his. He goes to the launch of this show that you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
And it was aired in a very small screening room in Soho House. It doesn't get much smaller than that, right?
No, they're small. They're small.
Right? As you know every screening room like the back of your hand. So the Netflix lady comes over to my mate Colin and goes, oh, Colin, hi. Would you like to come and say hello to Bob? You have to call him Bob, by the way. You don't call him Rob. So would you like to come and say hello to Bob? So Colin, who's just like me and Ray, goes, oh, shit. What am I going to do? It's Robert De Niro. I got to think of something. Yeah. Can't just go, hello, Mr. De Niro, love your work. I mean, because that's just lame, as you know, because you're in the industry. So Colin, thinking like lightning, goes, hi, we've got a mutual friend.
Yeah.
Wait for it. Well, this is just the best thing Colin does. He says, oh, I can't do it. Really? He goes, yes, Marty Scorsese. Oh, and he does the killer line, which I haven't forgiven Colin for coming up with this killer line to Bob De Niro in Soho House, London. He goes, yeah, we were so disappointed that you couldn't play Butcher Bill in Gangs of New York. And he goes, oh, yeah. And then they have a conversation. I was livid.
Well, I'm cross. You got to call him Bob because I was.
No,
told
you have
call him
to,
Mr.
because
De Niro.
the Netflix people said you call him Bob. You know that. Well, you've done it a million times.
No, I know, but I've told you the story that when I interviewed him, I was very strictly told that I had to refer to him and call him Mr. De Niro.
Wow.
And I said, Al Pacino's going to be sitting next to him. I know Al very well. I'm not going to call Al Mr. Pacino.
Yeah.
So it's going to look a bit odd if I call Bob Mr. De Niro. And they said, no, you have to call him Mr. De Niro.
Maybe he's mellowed, said no one ever.
Maybe he's mellowed in the last 5 years.
When Chantal, I just want to say this because people just think, oh, Chantal, she says, we were in LA, Chantal and I'm talking. She says, oh yeah, like I'm excited if I get like served in Lidl, if I can get to the front of the queue, that's like a result for me. So I said, have you had a good day? She said, oh yeah, well, Al was in. Bloody hell's Al. So Al Pacino's in her, I don't mean just in the building, I mean in her office, which was a very nice corner office with a lovely view across the mountains and everything, the valleys. And I've never forgotten you said this to me because I've got an encyclopedic mind for trivia. And she said he'd had some breakfast and he had something on his tie. And you went, Al, come here. And you got like a napkin and you're cleaning him up. I thought, that's like, no one thinks about Al Pacino having spilt something, It was just great. Just fantastic. I just love that story. It's just,
oh dear.
Yeah, I know. That's good. So that's on Netflix, that show,
That's called 0 Day. It's on Netflix. There are 6 1 hours and it started, I think yesterday. I think it was yesterday it started. Yeah. So yep, you can just sit at home on your sofa. You don't have to go to the cinema. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Just turn it on.
Wow. Yeah. Wowza. And the other thing I would say, if you're a big fan of Only Murders on the Building, which is on Disney Plus,
yes,
season 3 disappointing. I hear season 4 is great. Season 1 was fantastic. Season 2 pretty good. Season 3 a little bit lame. Season 4 apparently a sensation. So
okay,
there we go.
Right, and don't forget the new series of Hacks.
Oh,
you and I love. I've done the whole lot. I've done all 8 episodes.
And where's that? Where do you find that?
Came out 10 days ago. Let me think where Hacks is.
We'll find it.
Sky. It's on Sky and Now in this country.
Oh, now? Now. That. And that is it. Chantal Rickards OBE, the greatest. Thank you so much. We will see you, God willing, next week.
Great pleasure.
Thank you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, here and in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and in northeastern United States and all over the world, that is it. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak from the heart. It wasn't at the beginning of the show. It probably wasn't as eloquent as I wanted. I thought if I write it down, it'll just come out as, too considered. I just, I spoke from the heart. If it upset anybody, well, I'm not going to apologize, to be perfectly honest, because I think there's some things you just can't apologize for. Bless you for allowing me to do that. And thank you, finally, for all the lovely, lovely hundreds of birthday wishes for Ebony, the mini schnauzer. I couldn't believe it. I put out a little post. Hundreds of people piled in, wishing her happy 16th birthday. She is driving me around the bend, but I love her dearly. But she's a pain in the bum. But I love her dearly. But she is 16. And thank you for that. That was so sweet of you. I'll be back on Monday with Neil Longy Long and all his NLP and Brainbox kind of stuff. Until then, thanks to everybody. Thanks for watching all over the world. Until we meet on Monday, try and stay out of trouble for 5 minutes. For goodness sake, you're grown-ups now. I tell myself that every day. Bye.